We've got special guest Coach Tony Dungy in Colorado Springs with USA Wrestling today. Coach, thanks for being here. Just want to ask you what's the purpose of your trip?
Well, it's great. I actually got to kill two birds with one stone. I'm speaking at a conference in Woodland Park, a men's conference, and so along the way I got to stop into the U.S. Olympic Training Center and talk with some of the wrestlers about a program, HBCU program they've got going.
Yeah, so you met with Jahi Jones, the executive director, and Carrie McCoy, who's also on the board for the HBCU initiative. Why is this something that was important to you to be involved with?
Well, there's a long history of excellence in HBCU schools, and my dad and mom were kind of a product of that time frame. My daughter went to an HBCU school, and so when they came with the idea of reintroducing wrestling into those programs, I just thought it would be fantastic and wanted to do what I could to support it.
You had James Brown on the call with us today earlier on Zoom. For you guys, could you just expand just a little more on just the HBCU, just why it is important for you guys as buddies, even?
Well, I think with us, with our sports background and realizing there was a time when those historically black colleges and universities, they were the outlet for African American athletes. And I played on a Super Bowl winning team in 1978 that had probably 50% of our African American players were HBCU grads. And that was the glory time for those programs. And they've done so much academically, socially, athletically in our country's history. To now see them maybe not have that status that they once had, and figure out ways we can get it reintroduced and bring them back a little bit. So when they talked about this wrestling program and restarting wrestling, I just thought it would be fantastic. And James is the same way. We're both kind of grew up in the 50s and 60s, and so realizing our history, it just is special to us.
And selfishly, as a wrestling fan, I want to ask you about your background with your players that have had wrestling backgrounds and just how that affected them and their success in the NFL.
Well, I can tell you, when I used to coach and scout, I looked for players who had wrestling background because you knew, number one, they had discipline, they had toughness, they had the explosive lower body strength, and all of that would translate into football. And so I had some players who were outstanding wrestlers, and I know what it brings to the table. So I went to the University of Minnesota. We had a great wrestling program there. I was a freshman with a couple of Big Ten and national champion wrestlers. And I got to really understand the dedication, the sacrifice, the work that it took. We would go home after our football practice, and I'd go back to the dorm and eat as much food as I could eat. And then these guys would say, "Oh, we worked hard, but we can't eat too much because we've got to maintain this certain weight." I said, "Wow, how do you do that?" So that's when I think I first got impressed with the discipline of wrestlers.
And then I'll close with this one. You have kind of developed this relationship with USA Wrestling over the last year and a half or so. Can you just talk about how that started?
Yes, our chaplain with the Minnesota Vikings, Tom Lamphere, was a wrestler at the University of Minnesota. He's got a wrestling background. He knows a lot of these guys. So a couple of years back, especially when the COVID hit and we were trying to figure out ways we could continue to motivate the wrestling team, they asked me to speak to the guys, and I was so thrilled and honored, and that kind of got me started, got my foot in the door with USA Wrestling.
You already got your gear on and everything.
I love
Looking
it.
good.
I love to represent it, yes.
All right, thank you, Coach.
Thank you.